Dominic.
Alair. Excellent. Hi, Alair. It's
It's a
awesome.
really pleasure to have you here.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much.
Gene Hoglan, man. No había nada más distante de la noción de lo que iba a hacer en mi vida que entrevistar a este man. De él no voy a decir más nada. El nombre habla por sí solo. Disfruten esta entrevista gracias a The Eclectic Agency y Tony Sinclair.
Are you ready to start touring?
Well, we are ready to continue the symbolic healing tour. You know, this one being the symbolic healing of Latin America, and we are, you know, we just did a month of this run in the United States, and it was, you know, an absolute wonderful success. And so we're really excited to bring this tour down to Latin America and just celebrate the music of death, celebrate the music of Chuck Schuldiner, as well as, you know, I mean, some of our legacy as well. You know, we're all involved here. So, you know, having this, you know, it is a celebration every night. You know, the music is, you know, pretty glorious, whether you are a Death fan or not a Death fan. That's you know, that's cool. But we are here to play some kick-ass music and play it well and really just represent all things about death, the music, the band, Chuck Schuldiner, you know, the musical legacy, just represent that really amazingly well played. And just every night is just a fantastic, wonderful night of a memorable night of metal is what everybody is in store for. Totally.
Yes, we're pretty excited here to have you guys.
Excellent. I think that's our first show in Panama ever, I believe.
Yes,
Right.
I'm sure that it is. Have you ever been here in Panama?
I don't believe I ever have.
No?
Nope.
It's pretty hot in here, so
I hear, man. I understand.
yes, it is. Jean, how do you prepare for before you going on tour? And during the tour, do you have any routines that you can share with us?
Absolutely. You know, the way I prepare on the tour is right here. I'm at my drum rehearsal. I'm at my rehearsal studio at the moment, and I rehearse very much for every tour. This has been like the month of December has been the first month that I have not been down at the drum studio at, you know, rehearsing drums every single day. You know, I spent about 10 months on the road last year, and then at the end of the Death to All tour, I had a lot of books to do. Bookkeeping for the tours. I had a lot of that going on afterwards, so I had to take a few days off, and those were the first few days I've had off from drums since definitely December 1st, 2024. So it had been a direct year where I had played drums more or less every single day. You know, maybe there's a handful of days where I didn't play some drums, whether it, you know, being on tour. Travel days are usually the days I didn't play the drums. You're on a plane, you're traveling to the next show, you're not actually playing drums. That was pretty much about it. So I spent a lot of time getting ready for the shows. I spent, you know, because you're always trying to keep your chops up. As everybody knows, this is a pretty aerobic style of music, very athletic. Yeah. And so you got to treat yourself like an athlete in the mid, you know, in between seasons, you know, a tour being a season, another tour being a season, you do have to, you know, keep your skills very sharply honed. And that's one thing I'm really good at. I will always make time for it. You know, I'm looking at my leg weights right down there. I'm about to put those on as soon as we're done here and start jamming again. I play with leg weights. These are the leg weights I'm going to be having on the tour. You know, I'm just looking at them right over there. So, you know, I train with leg weights. I also my warm up involves these. I just tape 3 of my drumsticks together. Mm-hmm. You know, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, and you know, I do a bunch of just rudiments and things like that. And I don't even need a drum pad for those. I'm just doing it in the air here, just to use that as, you know, if you're Panamanian, you understand baseball. And the batters, you understand the batter's donut. They put
Yes.
that big weight on the bat, swing it around in the on deck circle, pop the donut off, go up, swing the bat. It's lighter. Same concept with the leg weights, same concept with the big drumstick. So that's a lot of the training that goes on before the tour and as well as before the show. A lot of that happens. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a very good friend of mine who probably he made this interview possible, Tony Sinclair, and he sent me one question, a couple of questions for you. He wants to know if that's real that you sat in front of Dave Lombardo's drum set to hold it during the Haunted the Chapel recording.
That is very true. Yeah, it was for chemical warfare. And I have told the story many times, and Dave will agree. We were at the recording, and I know he had already tracked. I think it was Captor of Sin. I remember standing behind Dave as he's tracking, and I'm just like air drumming along with him. I'm standing right behind him. It was so young and so new back then that I'm, who does that? He's 18 years old. I'm 16 years old. I'm just waving drumsticks right behind him. I remember hitting him in the back when I didn't like that lick right there. It's like, dude, like who does, Dave was very patient, but, yeah, it was, in the control booth, and Dave, starts playing, Chemical Warfare. And then, the song stops and he's like, hey man, can somebody come out to hold my drums? They didn't have a drum carpet. They only had a concrete floor. They didn't have any kind of thing to hold your drums. Can somebody come in here and just hold on to my drums? And sure enough, there were about 6 or 8 heads that turned to me. And hey, you're the drummer, Gene, so you go in there. So I'm like that. I'm down there. I'm on my hands and knees. I got my arms around cymbal stands and mic stands and all this stuff, and I'm holding his toms, and holding his, he's got the toms there. I remember it's the same drum set that's on the picture of probably Show No Mercy, same one he's playing on Hell Awaits as well. So any photos from that era, it's the same drum kit, which was a Tama kit, and it had concert toms on it, and so that means no bottom heads there. So, and he also had Evans hydraulic drum heads that were purple, I'm pretty sure, not red, not blue, but purple. And I just remember holding the tom, the big tom right here is at the beginning of that song is right here. It's right above my head. And I'm looking up and I'm seeing this stick. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, boy, Dave, I sure hope you have like 1 or 2 takes at most of this song, because if we're going to be here for a couple hours, I'm going to die, like this. Oh my God, it's so loud. It's right here. He nailed it in 1 take. Awesome. They did a safety take after that. Great. And that's just how I will always remember. And that's how every time Chemical Warfare ever comes on, I just remember that image of me, tom right here, and it's, I feel the blowing because it's a concert tom, there's no bottom head. So it's like, I feel wind on my head of all of that. And so, yeah, so that's pretty fun. And I remember that he used my china, all that middle stuff. And that's what he used to call it. He's like, hey, Gene, can I borrow your car? That's what he called the china. I was like, yeah, man, here you go. Take it. So that's pretty fun. But yes, that is a true story. Absolutely.
Okay. How do you feel about your transition
from Dark Angel to Death?
Dark Angel was, they were playing shows before I was in them. And so, we were all part of the birth of thrash metal. We were all part of it, Metallica being the leaders, Dark Angel and Slayer being the other 2 bands from Los Angeles doing a similar style. So, that was a very magical period of time. And so when I ended up joining Dark Angel, and we I guess my joining helped create a furthering of the aggression kind of thing. So there was that, and I spent a number of years with Dark Angel. And so when Chuck had reached out to me, Dark Angel had just kind of started a very, very lengthy hiatus. We sort of, I guess, broke up, I suppose. But we, Chuck and I were placed in touch with each other, and we knew each other for a long time before that. We were both part of the underground tape trading scene and pen pals, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
When we started talking about, maybe working together, we were both very open to the idea. And that is one thing that I definitely allowed Mr. Sean Reinert's drumming to influence the approach I was going to take on the Individual Thought Patterns album, because Sean laid a fantastic template down for Death's drums. And there were other bands that were doing technical music at the before Sean and Paul were on the Human album. Bands like Atheist, Steve Flynn on drums. That was technical. Mekong Delta, technical to a degree, and Watchtower, of course, with the legendary Mr. Rick Kolaluka. Those are all big influences on us all. Absolutely. So having the template already laid of, wow, the drums don't have to be just real straightforward death metal drumming. And hearing Chuck's new material, I'm like, wow, this is this is a departure from even Human. Human to me was a pretty aggressive record. I thought that was a pretty, songs like Flattening of Emotions, Mission of my life, of my destiny, Suicide Machine, and all these pretty darn aggressive tunes. It was starting to evolve into what into what Chuck's vision for Death was going to ultimately lead to. You see those evolutions really, starting with Human, but then, growing during Individual Thought Patterns. So approaching the drums, I loved, jazz fusion. I loved prog rock. I loved Human. I loved Watchtower. I loved, Al Di Meola. Gino Vanelli, the Brother to Brother albums. So all of these albums that I was really into, all of these influences that were, good to go, that was really cool. It's just being able to apply some influences that were outside of the box. Neil Peart, huge influence, of course, always. And, Dean Castronovo, another big influence. His influences were really showing on the Symbolic record, but that's where it kind of started with me anyway, and the difference between the Dark Angel approach to drums and the Death approach. One thing I tried to always have as part of my style, I guess, I was always trying to write beats that had never been heard before. Okay. Like, hey, write, have some beats that are brand new and fresh, and there are times when, I think I'm creating this beat, but maybe somebody else has done it, but I've never heard it. So throw it in there, throw it all in the big mixing pot, and see what happens. So I've always been very very enthusiastic to throw in an influence that is not a very common one to the genre. I'm all about that. Leveling up,
Okay.
leveling up the evolution of drums, metal drums, drums in general. Hey, I'm if I can be a part of that, then killer.
Exactly. And how do you approach to a song? Do you first listen to the tracks, or you just go into the drum set and try to jam with the song?
Well, the usually I listen to the tracks, and when it came to the first album being Individual Thought Patterns, Chuck had sent me a riff tape, and I learned the riffs on the tape, and then I never played any drums to them, but I just envisioned what the drum beats would be. I put them in my head, just if you can hear a song, you can imagine what the drums are going to be, and I imagined them pretty much to how they came out on individual. I came up with them in before I go to sleep every night. It's like and I never practiced any of them until I got with Chuck. And so there was that approach for Individual Thought Patterns. And on Symbolic, I think it became apparent to Chuck that because by then Chuck had he had tried working with the drum machine, and he's like, man, this is it's gonna be a bigger headache than anything. Hey, Gene, you want to come out and just let's sit together and let's build these
Okay.
songs from the ground up rather than me trying to get some beats together and then just can you come out? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So that had a totally different approach than Individual Thought Patterns. But usually I'll check out whatever version of the song somebody wants to send. Sometimes it is they will tell me these are just the most basic bare bones drum beats that I just pulled off.
Go crazy.
Yeah, just you go nuts, you do your thing. And there are other people that I'm like, wow, I can tell you really took a lot of time to construct these parts. I can tell these are constructed from nothing. And they're like, well, actually, yes. And I'm like, I'm open. I can do my interpretation or I can do what you want. And I'm open to either. Sometimes those people tell me, yeah, just go nuts. Here are the templates. And yes, it's great programming. However, go nuts, do your thing. And there are some times where I'm like, what you programmed is so good that I can't say that I can improve upon what is already there in these demo forms. So are you cool if I equate, just put into human drum terms what you have there? And they're like, fantastic, great. So it runs the gamut. Sometimes it's like free reign, go nuts. Other times it's like, no, please follow what I do. And other times I'm the one saying, can I follow what you did? Because it's a win-win if that happens. So many a scenario comes into play. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Hey, Jean, after so many years, what do you think that continues to fuel your passion for drum?
This is all that I ever wanted to do. This goes back to when I was a kid. And by kid, I mean like maybe when I was 7 years old, I really started catching the drumming bug. I didn't get my first drum set until I was 13 years old, but from say definitely the age of 8 until 13, I taught myself how to play drums by air drumming. And let me tell you, my air drum kit was huge. That thing was gigantic. It looked like Neil Peart. But that's how I taught myself how to play. And I guess it's kind of I don't know. I know there's some kind of newer term like visioning or visualizing, something like that. One of those kind of terms where it's like I got a pair of sticks in my hand. I got my record player right there. I'm changing albums, playing along with it. And I'm trying to emulate what the drummer is playing. I can hear what his hi-hat's doing. I can hear what his kick drum is doing. I can hear what the fills are doing. Those are all I can imagine those real easy, those not challenging. And by the first time I ever sat behind a drum kit, I remember I went to a rehearsal with my cousin Ken, who this was in El Paso, Texas. We stopped by his rehearsal place before he started jamming with his band. He was 18, I was 12, and I got behind the kit and started jamming. First time ever playing a drum kit, and he was like, "Dude, you don't have a drum kit? Like, what in the world? That's pretty good. What in the world?" And I had played air drums for 5 years before that. Actually, hitting drums was not that much different from faking it, So that's how that worked out. And then it was on from there. So all I've ever done in my life is play drums. All I've ever done is toured and put out albums. I started touring when I was 16. I started putting out albums when I was 18. And so my entire adult life has revolved around drums. And what keeps me excited about it is being, right now I'm 58 years old and I'm playing better than I ever have. So keep leveling that up. So when you're 78 years old, wow, you're playing at this maximum. Yeah, that's exciting to me. Who knows what the future holds? But if I have anything to say in my own future, that is going to be my future. So, not where it's like, oh, that's adorable. Here's a 70-year-old guy playing some classic rock with a little band at the corner bar on the weekend. No, bringing it, wielding, flying double bass, just leveling up myself and, hopefully the genre, hopefully the medium of drums itself, hopefully. And so that's a big time, that is an inspiration for me to keep doing this, keep bringing it, So yeah, that's how I stay excited. Definitely.
That's what we all want, that you keep playing.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. Thank you to every drummer in Panama. Thank you to Panadiddles for tuning into this. And may we all have great success in 2026.
Thank you very much, Gene. It's a
Thank you,
pleasure
brother.
to talk to you.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you very much, Mr. Dominguez. Excellent. We'll see you soon.
Of course, my friend. I'll be there.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.